You see?
Yes, you can start.
Okay. Hello. Dobro jutro. Dzień dobry. Hello from Poland. I would like to show you how the Olympic Games affect the expansion of opportunities for the development of sport and recreation in host cities and nearby regions. And okay. How does the IOC see its role, and how does it see the role of the Olympic Games? According to the Olympic Charter, the IOC role is to encourage and support the development of sport for all and to promote the positive legacy of the Olympic Games to the host cities, regions, and countries. Before the Olympic torch is lit at the Olympic Stadium, the city must be granted the right to organize this event. This usually happens 7 years before the scheduled opening, but not always. The moment when the host is chosen is time for preparation. We can divide them into two categories: the events and the construction works. The organizers have many tools at their disposal to promote not only the upcoming games, but also sport per se. Also, all such events, even if they are not strictly sports, have a connection with sport and the idea of Olympism. In addition, the organizers also carry out test events that are designed not only to test new buildings and make any corrections, but also to interest the specific sport of residents. Of course, the Olympic Games are also the whole architectural and planning. An important element of new structures in the city are also public spaces and places that can become new areas for sports, recreation, or rest. I will show you the example of Athens in a little more detail. In this case, 35 for sports competition were used in Olympic Games, of which 9 were modernized facilities, 21 were new venues, and 5 was an adapted, such as squares or streets used during the marathon or walking competition. The main basis of the games were large sports complexes. The first Waka complex already existed in Athens before it was modernized. The complex in Hellinikon was built on a part of the former airport board, and the complex in the Faliro coastal zone developed the devastated shore and the former city beach into a modern complex of sports venues, bicycle paths, and pedestrian esplanade. I have divided new sports opportunities in Athens into the 3 categories. The first is a new sports opportunities for professional and amateurs. The second is a new opportunities for learning and education about sports and discovering new discipline. And the third is a new public spaces for individual sports, as well as recreation and leisure. The first category is an example of well-used sports venues by sports clubs, professional athletes, and by residents individually. For each case, I gave several examples on the right side of the monitor. Several of the buildings have also been reorganized and are currently used for purposes other than sports. The second category is the use of venues for educational purposes and organizing events of various ranges. Unfortunately, in the case of new and unpopular sports objects in Greece, such as softball, baseball, field hockey, beach volleyball, these buildings are deserted and fall into ruin. The worst situation is in the third category, urban spaces that were supposed to be new elements on the city map, where people could go jogging, skateboarding, inline skating, running, or doing yoga together, were poorly designed and don't attract residents or are inaccessible most days of the year. One of the reasons why this happens in this case is the climate and the fact that the Athenians are rather looking for shady and cool places to play sports, which gives them numerous streets or parks. In turn, the new spaces are extremely sunny, devoid of larger trees that give shade. So what possibilities that the Olympic Games can be a factor supporting the development of sport activity? First of all, those that are well planned and thought out from the beginning, meeting the needs of residents, local business, tourists, and have well planned marketing activities. And successful investments are unused opportunities are the result of wrong decision of organizers and municipal authorities and narrow perspective. I will now present a few examples not only from Athens. The first is an example from, of course, Athens. It's a swimming pool complex in the main Olympic Park, because we don't have many times, so I just tell you a few words about examples. Another pool is this time in Barcelona. This is a great example of popular place for sports activities and fun. Here's my discovery from last year. The still existing main area of the 1924 Olympic Games in Paris is still used as a training place for local sports clubs, but also for individual athletes, among other in athletics and running, etc. This stadium, of course, will be modernized for the needs of field hockey competition during the 2024 Olympic Games. And here is an example from the Winter Olympic Games, a winter sport complex in Whistler, where Canadians could spend time with their families on cross-country skis, downhill skis, or in summer on walks and runs. Assessment and relaxation areas between equally abandoned sports facilities. Next, also Athens, the Oaka complex and its beautiful architecture, which unfortunately didn't help to activate the local population to use the space for recreational or sports purposes. An equally well-known example of the Winter Games in Sarajevo. Here the main factor was, of course, the ongoing war in these areas and no idea how to use them today. And the last example, the Hill complex in Grenoble, is a similarly overgrown, usually in such places, for example in Cortina d'Ampezzo. Despite not using the ski jump itself, football fields are organized on the outrun place of the ski jump. Here the whole complex is abandoned. And to sum up, do the Olympic Games give the opportunity to activate and develop sports and recreation activities of the inhabitants? Definitely yes. Thanks to the Olympic Games, new sports venues are created, all facilities are renovated, and new spaces for rest, physical activity, and recreation are created. This creates favorable conditions for organizing sporting events, family meetings, and school competitions related to sporting activities. And so are the inhabitants and city authorities taking advantage of these opportunities? Unfortunately, not always. Due to planning errors, lack of financing, lack of interest on the part of residents, and poor marketing, some of the facilities and spaces are not used as intended or remain completely abandoned. The problem is also often the passing time and even taking place along the way, such as the war in former Yugoslavia. However, in many cases, new objects and spaces are becoming a place for sports, eagerly visited by locals and tourists. Numerous sporting events, larger or smaller, attract young people, and promote physically activity. In conclusion, only relevant, well thought out and discussed plans and assumptions can lead to an increase in the sport activity of the local community and to the development of sport and recreation in the areas hosting the Olympic Games. And that's all. Thank you for your attention. Chwala. Dziękuję. And here is some sources of my presentation.
Thank you, Professor Omorczyk. I open discussion. Very good presentation. Are there any questions? I cannot see any raised hand. Okay, I have one question for you. Do you have data in percentage if there is increase in people who started to practice this to say little sports or little known sports after last two Olympic Games in London and Rio de Janeiro? That will be very interesting data.
I can you hear me clear? Can you repeat once again?
Yes. Do you have data in percentage if there is increase in people who started to practice this to say little sports or little
Yes.
sports after
Yes.
the Olympic Games?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have some data about this. Maybe not from the Rio de Janeiro, but I have from the London.
Yes.
For example, in London, there is no change in sport activity before and after the Olympics. The same situation is in Vancouver and in Athens. In the first year, it was a 6% growing up the activity, but 5 years later, 13% falling down. So this is the not good example, and we see that that the Olympic Games we don't provide the opportunities, but not increase the sporting activity in the citizens.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope to see you next year in Dubrovnik.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. I cannot see